January always comes with a familiar feeling. The holidays are over, credit card statements have arrived, your inbox is full of bills, and you're back at your desk with one quiet question hanging in the air. This year, what am I going to do differently? You promise to save more. You promise to invest smarter. You promise that this will finally be the year your finances get on track. But here's the hard truth. 90% of Americans don't fail because they lack discipline. They fail because they do the right things in the wrong order. They invest before they're secure. They buy assets before cleaning up their debt. They try to copy other people's wealth strategies while their own financial foundation is still leaking every single day. Preston calls this the most dangerous trap in personal finance. You think you're moving forward, but in reality, you're just spinning in place. And every new year, the cycle starts again. New goals, same mistakes. If you've ever wondered why you followed all the right advice but the money still never seems to stay, the problem may not be what you're doing, but when you're doing it. Too early or too late. And if you don't want 2026 to look exactly like 2025, then maybe it's time to rethink the order before you focus on the results. Step 1. Protect your finances from disaster. Most people begin their financial journey with a familiar question: what should I invest in? Preston starts somewhere completely different. What could destroy you overnight? According to him, your biggest mistake isn't poor investing. It's ignoring risks that have the power to wipe you out instantly. You can spend 10 years building wealth, but a single event, an accident, a medical bill, a job loss, can erase everything back to zero. Preston calls this a financial disaster because it strikes when people least expect it. People with stable jobs, families with solid incomes, people who are confident they'll figure it out. The reality is that many Americans live in a far more fragile financial state than they realize. They invest consistently. They contribute to a 401k. Some even have a stock portfolio. Yet they don't have enough cash to survive a major shock. And when that shock arrives, they're forced into the worst possible moves, selling investments at the wrong time or taking on high-interest debt just to stay afloat. Picture a young suburban family. Both spouses work, income is steady. They've just started investing and feel like they're on the right path. Then one day, an unexpected accident sends one of them to the hospital. They have insurance, but the deductible is several $1,000s. That money isn't available. Within weeks, credit cards are maxed out, high-interest debt appears, and their entire financial plan begins to collapse piece by piece. Preston emphasizes this isn't a lack of financial knowledge, it's a lack of preparation. You can't call yourself an investor if you haven't protected yourself from the most basic risks first. That's why step 1 isn't about returns, it's about survival. Making sure you have the right insurance. Making sure your deductible isn't a number that causes panic. Making sure a single event doesn't force you to choose between your health and your finances. Consider another common scenario. An American worker suddenly loses their job during a round of layoffs. Without financial protection, just a few weeks of unemployment can break everything. But if they prepared ahead of time with insurance and emergency cash, they can search for a new job calmly instead of desperately accepting the first option that comes along. Preston wants you to understand this. Financial protection isn't pessimism, it's respect for reality. Life doesn't ask whether you're ready, it only asks whether you have a plan. And here's the most important lesson of step 1. When you're protected, you buy yourself the right to think long-term. You stop making decisions out of panic. You stop destroying your plan every time something goes wrong. You give your money the chance to work the way it's supposed to. You cannot build wealth on a foundation that can collapse at any moment. Step 1 won't make you rich overnight, but it ensures that what you build won't be blown away by the first strong wind. So ask yourself this: if a major shock happened in the next few weeks, would your finances hold, or would you pay the price through decisions you'll regret for years to come? Step 2. Claim the free money from your employer. Once you've built a protective shield so your finances don't collapse when life happens, Brian Preston points you to an uncomfortable truth. Millions of Americans are quietly turning down their own money. Not because they don't earn enough, not because they don't care about the future, but because they misunderstand the order. Preston calls the employer match in a 401k free money, not as a marketing slogan, but as a mathematical fact. If your company says, you put in 5%, we'll put in 5%, then the moment you contribute, you've earned a 100% guaranteed return. No stock, no real estate deal, no crypto investment can offer that, with zero risk. And yet, many people skip this step. They say, I'll invest later. They say, I need the cash right now. Or worse, 401ks are boring. Brian Preston argues that this isn't a personal failure, it's a structural mistake. Imagine a young office worker in the US, a few years out of college. Income isn't high, but it's steady. His company offers a 401k with a 4% match. He chooses not to enroll because he wants to invest on his own. Stocks feel more exciting, more in control. Over the next few years, the market goes up and down. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses. Meanwhile, every single year, he quietly passes up thousands of dollars his employer was ready to give him, simply because he didn't bother to bend down and pick it up. Preston doesn't judge, he just asks a simple question to put things in perspective. If you were walking down the street and saw a $100 bill on the ground, would you leave it there? The employer match is that $100 bill. It's not flashy, it doesn't trigger dopamine, but it's one of the rare advantages the system gives ordinary workers, a way to get ahead of the market from day one. The key point is this: Step 2 doesn't require you to be a great investor. It doesn't ask you to predict the market. It only requires enough discipline not to ignore the most obvious advantage available. Brian Preston emphasizes that many people obsess over complex optimizations, which fund to choose, which strategy to follow, while skipping the easiest decision with the biggest impact. That's exactly why Step 2 comes right after Step 1. Only once you're protected can you safely accept this free money without worrying about pulling it out in a moment of panic. There's another subtle point Preston makes. The employer match isn't just money. It's a signal, a lesson in how the system rewards doing things in the right order. You prioritize the foundation, you receive the reward. You stay patient, you gain the advantage of time. Year after year, those matches compound quietly. No one posts about it on social media, but after 10, 15, 20 years, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Step 2, then, is a test of long-term thinking. It asks a simple question: are you willing to do the boring thing today so you don't regret it tomorrow? Because in personal finance, the winners are rarely the ones who move the fastest. They're the ones who don't miss the advantages everyone else chooses to overlook.
Step 3. Eliminate high-interest debt. After you've built your financial defense and stopped leaving free money on the table from your employer, Brian Preston moves to a step most people know is right, but endlessly delay: eliminating high-interest debt. Not because they don't understand it, but because high-interest debt attacks emotion, not just math. Brian Preston calls high-interest debt the silent thief of your future. It doesn't take your money all at once. It takes it little by little every month, while you still feel like you're managing just fine. And that quiet drain is exactly why so many people underestimate how destructive it really is. Most Americans don't fall into high-interest debt because of luxury. They fall into it because of life. An unexpected medical bill, a car breaking down when there's no cash available, a period of job loss. The credit card becomes the fastest solution and the longest-lasting trap. Preston doesn't say debt makes you irresponsible. He says debt distorts your decision-making. When you're carrying debt at 18 to 25% interest, you're no longer investing from calm. You're investing from pressure. Every financial decision is quietly colored by the same question: can I make it through this month? Picture a young American family. Both spouses work, income is stable. They're not living paycheck to paycheck. But over the years, they've accumulated $15,000 in credit card debt, travel, home repairs, stress spending during tough seasons. Each month, they still invest a little for retirement. They still talk about long-term goals. Meanwhile, the interest on those cards is silently eating away at every bit of progress they're making. Brian Preston asks a blunt question: why can't you build wealth while swimming upstream with a storm pushing straight into your face? From a purely mathematical standpoint, eliminating a 20% interest rate is the same as earning a guaranteed 20% return. No volatility, no risk, no market swings. But Preston stresses that this isn't just about numbers, it's about mental freedom. When high-interest debt disappears, the atmosphere in your mind changes. You stop being driven by fear. You stop making short-term decisions just to buy yourself another month of breathing room. You become more resistant to the get-rich-quick traps everyone else is sharing. You begin to see money as a tool for building, not as a fire extinguisher. Many people try to invest while paying off debt because they're afraid of missing the market. Preston doesn't dismiss that fear, but he points out a hard truth. In real life, very few people can stay disciplined investors while they're still crushed by credit card interest. Pressure wins, emotions step in, and mistakes repeat themselves. Step 3 doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty about your financial reality. You don't need to wipe out every debt overnight, but you do need to prioritize the debt that's destroying your future the fastest. Brian Preston emphasizes that this step is liberating. Every high-interest balance you eliminate is a piece of your future returned to you. A portion of mental energy is freed, allowing you to think longer term, calmer, and with greater clarity. Because before your money can work for you, you have to make sure it isn't working against you.
Step 4. Build a true emergency fund. Brian Preston believes that an emergency fund isn't a tool for getting rich. It's a tool that keeps you from destroying yourself before you ever get the chance to become rich. Many Americans think they already understand emergency funds. They know they're supposed to have 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside. But in reality, most people build this fund only halfway. They mix it with investment accounts. They park it in places that are hard to access. Or worse, they treat their emergency fund like a side account for expenses that aren't truly emergencies. Preston emphasizes this point clearly. An emergency fund is not idle money. It's psychological armor. When life hits unexpectedly, job loss, medical bills, car repairs, a leaking roof, your emergency fund decides one critical thing: whether you'll be forced to make bad financial decisions at the worst possible moment. The most common mistake is building an emergency fund on paper, but not in practice. People invested in stocks because letting money sit there feels wasteful. They assume they can sell when they need cash. But Preston points out the paradox. Personal crises often arrive at the same time as market crises. When you lose your job, the market is usually down. When you need money the most, your assets are often worth the least. Imagine a tech worker in Seattle. He invests most of his savings in the stock market, confident that he's young and can handle the risk. Then a wave of layoffs hits. Stocks drop sharply. His income disappears. Suddenly, he's forced to sell long-term investments at the bottom just to cover rent and health insurance. Not because he invested poorly, but because he had no buffer. According to Brian Preston, a true emergency fund must meet 3 clear criteria:
safety, high liquidity, and separation from investment emotion. It doesn't need to grow. Its only job is to exist, to protect you during your worst moments. Here's a simple, everyday example. A middle-class family in Ohio has enough in their emergency fund to cover 4 months of living expenses. When the transmission on their minivan fails, a costly repair, they don't need to swipe a credit card, take out a high-interest loan, or touch their retirement accounts. The financial shock stops right there. It doesn't spill into other decisions. There's no domino effect. Preston calls this the difference between an incident and a disaster. Incidents are always lurking and can happen to anyone. Disasters only occur when you lack a buffer to absorb the shock. The subtle power of step 4 is this: an emergency fund doesn't help you earn more money, but it allows you to stay disciplined with every other step in the plan. When markets swing, you don't panic sell. When life gets hard, you don't abandon your long-term strategy. You have the right to wait. And in finance, the ability to wait is often the greatest advantage of all. Brian Preston stresses that many people fail at investing not because they chose the wrong assets, but because they were forced to act at the worst possible time. The emergency fund is what keeps that from happening. Step 4 may not feel like progress, but it creates stability. And stability is the foundation behind all sustainable growth. Because before you think about optimizing returns, you need to be sure of one simple thing: an unexpected shock won't destroy everything you're working so hard to build.
Step 5. Leverage tax-advantaged growth accounts. If high-interest debt is the thief of your future, then taxes are the silent partner you never invited, but one that always shows up when you succeed. Many Americans work hard, invest consistently, and only later realize something unsettling. The more they earn, the more they have to give away in taxes. Not because they did anything wrong, but because they were never taught how to place their money correctly from the start. Preston emphasizes that on the path to wealth, it's not enough to think about how much you make, you also have to think about how much you keep. And this is where tax-advantaged growth accounts become essential. The paradox is this: the most powerful financial tools are often the most boring ones. Roth IRAs, HSAs, after-tax 401k options. They don't promise overnight riches. They don't come with exciting stories like meme stocks or crypto. And because of that, many people ignore them, only to pay the price in hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes later. Brian Preston calls this an order of operations mistake. Americans often ask, "What should I invest in?" before asking, "Through what type of account should I invest?" According to him, the second question is the foundation. Imagine 2 people investing in exactly the same way, the same amount of money, the same returns, over the same time period. The only difference is the account. One invests in a taxable brokerage account. The other invests through tax-advantaged accounts. After 20 or 30 years, the gap between them isn't a few $1,000s. It could be the value of an entire home or several years of financial freedom. Here's a familiar example for middle-class Americans. A young professional in Chicago starts investing at 25. Every year, he contributes steadily to a Roth IRA, not because he's a financial expert, but simply because that's what you're supposed to do. Meanwhile, his friend invests the same amount into a taxable brokerage account because it feels more flexible. 30 years later, both have invested well, but when it's time to withdraw, the first person takes money out without worrying about taxes. The second starts calculating. How much can I withdraw without triggering taxes? When should I sell? How do I avoid pushing myself into a higher tax bracket? The difference isn't in investment returns, it's in the sense of freedom when it comes time to use the money. Brian Preston highlights the HSA as a perfect example of a hidden gem within the U.S. financial system. With an HSA, contributions are tax-deductible, growth is tax-free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are also tax-free. 3 layers of advantage, yet many people ignore it simply because they don't understand it or assume it's too complicated. The core lesson of Step 5 isn't memorizing every account type, it's changing how you think about taxes. Taxes aren't something that appears at the end of the journey, they show up the moment you make your first decision. Preston often says the wealthy don't avoid taxes through tricks, they reduce taxes through structure. They don't try to outsmart the system, they learn how to move correctly within it. When you use tax-advantaged growth accounts, you're doing something simple yet incredibly powerful. You're allowing time and compound growth to work in an environment with as little friction as possible. And over the long term, that reduction in friction creates an enormous difference. Step 5 marks a critical shift from financial defense to long-term growth optimization. You're no longer just trying to avoid mistakes, you're building a framework that allows every dollar to work harder for your future. Because in the end, wealth isn't about earning the most money, it's about keeping the most freedom from the money you earn. Step 6. Maximize your retirement accounts. Brian Preston is very direct about something many Americans don't want to hear. If you're not fully using your retirement accounts, you're not truly serious about building wealth. Not because these accounts are exciting. In fact, they're the opposite. They're boring. They're not something you show off on social media. They don't deliver quick wins. But that's exactly why they've become the most powerful wealth-building weapon the American middle class has ever had. The common mistake is treating retirement as something far away. I'm still young. I'll deal with it later. I need money for my life right now. Preston points out a painful paradox. The thing that makes you wealthy isn't how much you invest, it's how much time you give your investments to work. And time is the one asset you can never buy back. Picture two people, both 25 years old, earning the same income. The first starts maxing out their 401k and IRA as soon as they're able, even if it means living a little more modestly each month. The second delays, saying they'll invest aggressively once they make more money. 10 years pass. The first person now has a quiet growth engine running in the background. The second is still getting ready to start. Brian Preston emphasizes that retirement accounts aren't just investment tools, they're behavior control tools. When money is locked away for the future, you're far less likely to sabotage it with short-term emotion. You don't panic sell on bad news. You don't pull money out because you're afraid. You're forced to let time do the heavy lifting for you. For Americans, this system is intentionally well designed. 401ks, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, each one offers a specific tax advantage. Preston calls this a reward for patience. The government is willing to tax you less if you're willing to think further ahead than today. Here's a familiar example. A mid-career employee in Illinois earns a solid income but always feels like money is tight. Each year, he invests in taxable accounts, picks stocks, follows the news, stays active, but his retirement contributions stay at the minimum. 15 years later, he looks back and realizes a surprising thing. The portion of his wealth that grew most consistently with the least stress and the fewest mistakes was the part he barely touched. Preston makes this clear. Maximizing retirement accounts isn't about sacrificing the present, it's about buying freedom for the future. The day you're no longer dependent on a paycheck, the ability to say no to a bad job, the option to retire earlier or to work because you want to, not because you have to. Step 6 only works when you've handled the earlier steps. No high-interest debt choking your cash flow, an emergency fund protecting you from pulling money out at the wrong time, and full use of the free benefits already available to you. At that point, increasing retirement contributions stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like a natural progression. Brian Preston stresses this final idea. The winners aren't the ones who find the perfect investment. They're the ones who give good investments enough time to reveal their power. So here's the real question. If your future depends on the decisions you repeat today, are you giving your money enough time to become your ally, or are you still spending it like it's the enemy of your own future?
Step 7. Accelerate wealth building.
Brian Preston says this is the first step in the entire journey where you truly begin to play offense. The paradox is that most Americans want to accelerate right from the starting line, before the brakes are checked, before the seatbelt is fastened, and while the road ahead is still full of potholes. Step 7 only appears once you've followed the correct order. No high-interest debt choking your cash flow, an emergency fund providing protection, and full use of your retirement accounts. At that point, every additional dollar you invest is no longer a survival bet, it's a strategic decision. Preston emphasizes that acceleration doesn't mean recklessness. It means increasing the speed of what's already proven to work. Instead of chasing the next hot opportunity every week, you double down on systems that are simple, disciplined, and repeatable. A common mistake at this stage is thinking you've figured out the game. People start chasing higher returns by adding complexity, picking hot stocks, trying short-term strategies, listening to advice from friends or social media. Preston warns that when you accelerate, your mistakes accelerate too, and the cost of those mistakes is much higher than it was earlier on. Imagine a couple in Colorado, both in their 40s, stable income, no bad debt, a fully funded emergency reserve. They invest more aggressively into index funds month after month, ignoring short-term market noise. There's no dramatic story, no big wins to brag about, but after 10 to 15 years, that steady consistency builds a portfolio large enough to give them options: working fewer hours, retiring earlier, or shifting into work they genuinely enjoy. Preston calls this the power of disciplined boredom. Once the system is running, you don't need to be smarter than the market. You just need to avoid sabotaging yourself with emotional decisions. Accelerating wealth building also means changing how you relate to money. Money becomes a tool for freedom, not a measure of self-worth. You optimize cash flow. You raise your savings rate as income grows. You avoid lifestyle inflation, the trap that causes many Americans to earn more without ever becoming wealthier. Here's a familiar example. A software engineer in Texas receives a significant raise. Instead of immediately upgrading his house, car, and lifestyle, he controls the impulse, keeps expenses stable, and directs the additional income into long-term investments. Not because he's cheap, but because he understands that every dollar at this stage can buy him years of freedom later. Brian Preston makes this clear. Acceleration isn't about running as fast as possible. It's about running as fast as you can while staying in control of your direction. When the foundation is solid, you don't need to dodge every pothole. You simply keep moving forward, steadily and without panic. Step 7 is where many people begin to see tangible results, but it's also where discipline is most easily lost. And this is where long-term winners separate themselves from the rest. They don't let emotions step between them and the plan.
Step 8. Prepare for life's big goals. Brian Preston says this is the step where money officially stops being just a number and becomes a tool for designing your life. If the earlier steps helped you survive, stabilize, and grow, Step 8 forces you to answer a much harder question. What do I actually want to use this wealth for? Many Americans save diligently, invest consistently, and even accelerate their net worth, yet never stop to define the big goals of their lives. The result is paradoxical. They do everything right, but still feel empty. They have money, but no plan for how that money should serve their life. Preston emphasizes that the biggest financial decisions in life don't happen often, but when they do, the consequences of poor preparation can last for decades. Buying a home, raising children, paying for college, leaving a job to start a business, caring for aging parents, or even retiring early. Each choice requires money, but more importantly, it requires readiness. Consider a young family in California. They invest regularly. Their retirement accounts are growing nicely, but they never separate funds for their children's education,
When college tuition comes due, they're forced to pull money from retirement accounts, triggering taxes and sacrificing decades of long-term growth. Brian Preston calls Step 8 financial lane separation. Money meant for the distant future, retirement, must be protected. Money meant for medium-term goals must be separated and invested according to its timeline and risk tolerance. When every dollar has a clear mission, you no longer have to sacrifice one goal to rescue another. Here's another familiar scenario. A midlife American wants to step away from work for a few years to start a small business. Without a dedicated transition fund, he begins that journey under immediate financial pressure, and pressure often leads to rushed, poor decisions. But with enough runway prepared in advance, he gains time to experiment, fail, adjust, and stay the course. Step 8 is also where you align money with personal values. Not everyone wants a big house or a luxury car. Some people want time. Some want experiences. Some want peace of mind for their family. Preston stresses that money only reaches its true power when it serves what you value most, not what society tells you to chase. The subtlety of this step is important. Preparing for big goals doesn't mean stopping your investments. It means adjusting strategy to reduce risk during moments where failure isn't an option. As a home purchase approaches, that money can't be left to gamble with the market. When tuition payments are around the corner, certainty matters more than high returns. Brian Preston emphasizes this final idea. Wealth isn't measured by how much money you have, but by how many choices you can make without sacrificing your security. Step 8 moves you into a new phase, not just accumulating, but intentionally preparing. Not just reacting as life changes, but designing the major turning points before they arrive.
Step 9. Pay off low-interest debt and complete financial freedom. Brian Preston says that financial freedom isn't the moment you earn the most money. It's the moment money no longer gets to make decisions for you. Throughout the earlier stages of the journey, you were taught to optimize. Optimize returns, optimize taxes, optimize cash flow. But Step 9 marks a shift in priorities, from optimizing numbers to optimizing peace of mind. Many Americans carry low-interest debt for decades, especially mortgages. On paper, keeping low-interest debt while investing excess capital can produce higher long-term returns. And Preston openly acknowledges this. Mathematically, that approach often makes sense. But he also emphasizes something spreadsheets can't measure: the psychological weight of debt when you're already financially enough. Step 9 isn't a technical requirement. It's a deeply personal, strategic choice. When your assets are large enough, when passive income can cover most of your living expenses, paying off low-interest debt stops being a purely financial decision and becomes a lifestyle decision. Imagine a couple in their early 50s living in North Carolina. They followed the plan correctly: no high-interest debt, consistent investing, healthy retirement accounts. In theory, they could keep their mortgage for another 15 years and invest the difference. But once the house is fully paid off, everything changes. Not because they're richer on paper, but because every month passes without a mandatory obligation hanging over their lives. Brian Preston describes this as the difference between financial independence and financial freedom. Financial independence is when you can stop working. Financial freedom is when whether you keep working or not is entirely your choice. Another subtle but powerful aspect of Step 9 is this: when you carry no debt, your overall life risk drops dramatically. You're less vulnerable to economic shocks. You don't need high returns to sustain your lifestyle. And ironically, that stability allows your investment portfolio to become more resilient and sustainable. Preston points out that many people reach their number, yet still don't feel secure because they haven't closed old chapters. Debt, even low-interest debt, is still a thread tying you to future obligations. Step 9 is the moment you choose to cut that thread, not out of fear, but because you're finally strong enough to do so. There are no fireworks when Step 9 is complete, no dramatic victory moment. But there is a very different kind of morning. You wake up without the constant pressure to earn money at any cost. You work for meaning, not necessity. You spend money based on values, not comparison. Brian Preston concludes with this idea: the ultimate purpose of money is not infinite growth, but the gradual reduction of money's control over your life. And the final question Millionaire Mission leaves you with is this: if tomorrow money no longer had the power to decide for you, how would you choose to live your life? No one becomes financially free in a single year, but many people lose an entire decade simply by doing the right things in the wrong order. Millionaire Mission doesn't promise fast wealth. What it offers is something far more valuable, a path that's solid enough to go the distance and clear-headed enough to keep you from sabotaging yourself along the way. If the steps you've just heard feel uncomfortably familiar, like they're speaking directly to where you are right now, then this is a book worth slowing down for, reading thoughtfully, reflecting honestly, and applying it at a pace that actually fits your life. I've placed the link to the book right below this description for anyone who wants to go deeper and build a financial system that's sustainable from the ground up. And before you leave this video, ask yourself one simple question. New year? Do you want to keep reacting to money or finally start leading it on your own terms? If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need the right order to start again.